In a pivotal moment that would be etched in history, Jasmine Crockett took her stand during a live congressional hearing, shaking the very foundations of a system that had long turned a blind eye to the truth. In a mere 5 minutes, she confronted Senator Tim Scott, tackling the uncomfortable and often ignored issue of racially biased policing, coupled with the clandestine policies that shield violent officers from accountability. What unfolded would not only captivate the room but also reverberate through the media, influence votes in Congress, and compel America to take a long, hard look in the mirror. As the double doors of room 226 swung open at precisely 8:30 a.m., an air of gravity filled the atmosphere. This was no ordinary hearing. It felt like the culmination of years of tension, simmering frustrations, and whispered truths. Reporters quietly shuffled in, their notepads ready, while staffers murmured in anticipation as they took their seats. The marble walls stood silently cold, the seal of the United States Congress looming overhead, a stark reminder of the weight of the proceedings about to unfold. Chairman Holt leaned into his mic, his calm voice betraying the tension that underlay the moment. This is the final hearing on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act before it goes to the full House. A wave of quiet acknowledgement swept through the room, as the reality of 3 years of debates, delays, and diluted proposals converged upon this tense gathering. A vote was imminent that would shape policing practices for generations to come. At one end of the table sat Jasmine Crockett, poised but tense, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, knuckles white with anticipation. She didn't need to glance around to recognize that the room was focused on her, their eyes trained on her every move but rarely their ears open to her words. Opposite her was Senator Tim Scott, adjusting his gold pin with an air of composure, his unreadable expression belying a readiness to counter her assertions. These two figures represented not just political stances, but the broader symbolic clash of ideologies that had come to define the nation. Jasmine wore a dark blazer, her only adornment a small silver ring engraved with the initials, YA, a constant reminder of her cousin Jamal Anderson, the name of a young black man tragically shot by police during a routine traffic stop, merely because they thought he held a weapon. She would never forget him, she would never forgive the silence surrounding his death. Tim Scott, immaculate in his navy suit, had organized his notes carefully, prepared to defend the status quo. He believed that change should be incremental, a process that involved preserving the foundations of order he felt were essential to society. But to Jasmine, this so-called order represented a system that consciously prioritized silence over justice, complicity over accountability. The chairman signaled the beginning of the proceedings. Each of you will have 5 minutes for your opening statements. Taking a deep breath, Jasmine prepared to amplify the voices that had been stifled. 5 minutes. Just a fragment of time but laden with significance. She was not there to play it safe, she was there to address the truths that others had long ignored. Tim Scott leaned in, ready with his rebuttal. His voice, calm and practiced, echoed around the room. "Let me start by saying what many of us know," he articulated. The overwhelming majority of police officers in this country, 99%, wake up every day to serve and protect. They don't wake up looking to harm anyone. Jasmine's jaw tightened, a warning sign of the rising tide of emotions coursing within her. Tim's assertion, 99%, glimmered in the air, a reassurance that rang hollow to her ears. His words were methodical, echoing the sentiments of those who sought to maintain the status quo. But Jasmine knew the truth. Behind that 1% lay grave injustices, countless lives lost without accountability, whose stories had remained buried beneath bureaucratic silence. As Tim continued, insisting that the system didn't need dismantling, Jasmine felt the weight of the moment coiling tight within her, like a spring that had stored too much tension. She gently shifted in her chair but didn't yet breathe life into her response. Then, sensing the need to act, Jasmine rose without hesitation. The sound of her chair scraping against the marble floor was sharp and clear, cutting through the room's tension like a beacon. All eyes turned towards her, intuitively recognizing that something crucial was about to be revealed. 1%, Jasmine echoed, not in question but as a direct challenge. 1% of officers wield the power to kill an innocent person without consequence. This means that the other 99% lose all meaning. Each word landed heavily, making an indelible mark on his assertion. The room went silent, the gravity of her assertion hanging in the air. It was the kind of silence that followed something undeniable. We are not simply discussing insidious paperwork errors, she continued, locking her gaze with Senator Scott. We're talking about lives, people, children, men mistakenly regarded as threats. Mothers left with empty arms and no closure. Jasmine remained steady, yet her body seemed to vibrate with an energy that demanded attention. If even 1% of airplanes crashed, we'd ground the entire fleet. If 1% of surgeons mishandled patients on the operating table, we would shut down hospitals. But with policing, the story becomes convoluted as families bury their lost ones. She let her point resonate, the silence lingering like a held breath. Jasmine hadn't had to raise her voice. The profoundness of her truth overcame the need for volume. So no, Senator, 99% is not good enough if 1% can murder without facing justice. In that moment, Jasmine's voice drew a sharp line in the sand, prompting the audience to reckon with their complicity and collective denial regarding systemic issues woven deeply into the tapestry of American policing. As the hearing progressed, Tim Scott attempted to pivot the narrative once more, raising a marker of supposed neutrality by crafting a narrative steeped in statistical data. He asserted that isolated incidents should not overshadow the duty of those who wear the badge. He spoke smoothly about diminished use of force incidents and the importance of refraining from painting the entire institution with a brush of misconduct. Yet Jasmine listened patiently while he spoke, her heart resolutely accepting responsibility for speaking truth. When the time came again for her to respond, she smoothly slipped into the role of the challenger. She pulled out a confidential report, a document stamped, restricted, and favoring raw truths over polished narratives. Holding it aloft, she exposed a leaked internal memo from the FBI's Civil Rights Division that disclosed a jaw-dropping statistic. 27% of police departments had admitted to informal policies that discouraged following through on investigations into racial violence committed by officers, particularly when the victims were people of color. Gasps rippled through the audience as she shared the details. The gravity of what Jasmine laid before them was staggering. "We talk about bad apples," Jasmine proclaimed, meeting the eyes of her colleagues. "But what do you call it when the orchard is designed to bury the roots?" The room was filled with stunned silence. Tim Scott struggled to pivot, claiming that these circumstances were not representative of the larger police culture, arguing against systemic doctrine and emphasizing the need for support of the many good officers. Yet Jasmine pressed deeper, delivering an equally powerful truth. It's not just about the actions of individuals, it's about the culture that allows those actions to thrive. The room, having felt the weight of this revelation, shifted. Her courage and determination had transformed the entire dynamic. The truths Jasmine spoke were no longer floating statistics but visceral accounts of pain that begged recognition from those present. Just as they seemed to emerge from the shock, a conservative congressman uttered something that changed the atmosphere yet again. With disconcerting nonchalance, he directed, "If you're not happy with the police, you're free to move somewhere else." The room bristled as shockwaves reverberated from such blatant insensitivity. Jasmine's immediate response was instinctive, a thunderous slap of her palm upon the table. The sound bounced off the walls as if demanding attention, a challenge to focus, a testament to her determination to be heard. "I was born here," she said, standing strong and unwavering. "I'm not a guest." Her words, unyielding in their delivery, struck a chord that resonated through the chamber. She articulated the complexity of the pain, asserting that she no longer sought general kindness or politeness. What was at stake was far more significant. This was a matter of justice. As the hearing unfolded, a former police officer named Derek Callahan was introduced. With trembling hands, Callahan shared his experiences of working as an officer, recounting the unsettling training that led him to view black men as inherent threats. The room hung on his every word, and once more, Jasmine remained still as he unfolded his narrative of guilt and regret. Not to win sympathy, but to shed light on the deeply ingrained biases that plagued the system. When Callahan admitted that his perspective had changed through his own journey of reflection, it became clear to everyone present that this conversation was no longer merely ideological. It was a reckoning, individuals grappling with the confronting truths of their own experiences, their connections to the past, and the impact they could have on the future. Callahan's heartfelt apology resonated mightily within the chamber. His raw honesty challenged all in attendance to recognize the weight of their own roles in perpetuating a broken system. Suddenly, the walls seemed to vibrate. The air thickened with an intensity that left individuals piercing through the veil of ignorance they had previously accepted. As Callahan concluded his statement, the atmosphere transformed yet again. No longer was it purely a division of politicians or activists. For an increasingly rare moment, the room found itself suspended in silence for something deeper. A shared understanding began to emerge, an acknowledgement that the fight for justice transcended partisan divides. Having established a fragile connection, it became evident that Jasmine and Tim were still two sides of the same coin. While their paths were different, the values they espoused would converge into something profoundly transformative. Tim leaned forward and began outlining potential areas for compromise. "I believe in accountability," he affirmed, and today made it clear. "We need stronger tools to ensure it." As his voice rang out within the chamber, Jasmine registered the sincerity draping his statements and seized upon that moment to forge a path toward potential change. Their dialogue unfolded in the face of adversity and uncertainty. Raw emotion collided with structured policy, pushing both of them towards a place of growth. After intense negotiations, they drafted essential portions of the bill together, one that would ensure mandatory body cameras for all officers receiving federal funds. Through deliberation and collaboration, Jasmine's commitment to accountability was threaded into the policies Tim was championing. Together, they navigated the complexities, challenged each other's perspectives, and ultimately crafted a version that held the potential to enact real change within the system. When the final votes were cast, the nation watched with bated breath as the tally flashed across the digital screen in the broadcast room. The number, 217 to 213, represented not just an outcome on paper, it was a glimpse of hope. For a moment, the air felt charged with emotion, suspending time in between its rise and fall. As the chamber erupted into applause, the applause was muted. It held a collective realization. One victory was not the solution but merely the beginning in an ongoing fight for what was right. Jasmine processed the moment with careful restraint, recognizing the gravity of the work that still lay ahead. Once the applause dwindled, she approached the podium to offer her thoughts. "Changing laws is the easy part," she began, her tone slicing through the room. "But laws don't bleed, people do. Until the hearts behind the badges, behind the benches, and behind the microphones change, this isn't justice. This is merely paperwork." Her statement struck a sobering chord within the chamber. It wasn't about crossing party lines or celebrating the passage of legislation. It was a call to action for transformation in the hearts of those present. "Don't call this the end of a chapter," she urged, "call it the start of a much harder one." With those words, Jasmine did not merely deliver a speech but catalyzed a movement for meaningful accountability within law enforcement. Her determination to stand firm resonated with representatives from both parties. They recognized the weight of her call to action beneath their political divides. Meanwhile, outside the chamber, the world reacted fervently. Social media erupted with support for Jasmine, amplified by hashtags that pushed forward the narrative she had created. People rallied both for and against the reforms that stemmed from their contrasting experiences and open truths, illustrating the polarized state of the nation. As the tumultuous atmosphere outside brimming with raw emotions began to swell, Jasmine felt a sense of grounding within her. Having shared her truth and created space for others to do the same, she walked intentionally toward the door. Each step reverberated with purpose. She was no longer just a participant in a hearing. She had found her voice. Jasmine recognized the nation would not turn a blind eye. The healing had begun, but the road forward remained fraught with pain and challenge. As she exited the chamber, the words etched above the entrance, "Equal justice under law," seemed to watch her like a sentinel, guarding a beacon she had ignited in that room. The struggle was far from over. Yet Jasmine understood this. In a world that often silenced those like her resolve would launch a deeper reckoning, a reminder that progress demanded courage and insistent confrontation against long-standing injustices. And, as the echoes of her powerful call resounded in the hearts and minds of many, Jasmine Crockett became more than just a name. She became a symbol of resilience. A force of nature alternating hope with a cautious watch on a system still cloaked in silence, always ready to speak for those who had been denied their voice. The stage was set for a journey far greater than she had envisioned, but one she was fiercely prepared to navigate. With each challenge she faced, Jasmine recognized that the path of reform was an ongoing battle, one without a defined end but one she was determined to see through. Because she understood that in a land of many truths, every voice mattered. Hers was merely the spark to ignite a robust movement toward tangible change. Determined to tear down the walls of silence and to forge ahead through complexity, Jasmine Crockett stood as a testament that change, however arduous, would always endure. She had begun a revolution, not resting on a moment of victory, but cultivating a persistent push toward a future where justice would reign, and every name that had been silenced would one day be heard.